Hey friends, welcome back to the movie story. Tonight's film begins like a fun road trip, a group of college friends heading out to a music festival in an RV. But what starts as laughter and reunion quickly turns into pure terror. A dark road, a haunted forest, and a creature that can steal your face, mimic your voice, and drag you into the night. This is no ordinary monster, it's a Wendigo. And once it chooses you, there's no way out. Spoilers ahead, so let's dive in. The story begins with Carrie arriving to join the birthday celebration for her college friend Olivia. The other members of their friend group were still en route. While she waited, Carrie struck up a conversation with a small girl playing nearby, but the child's eerie and disturbing conduct prompted her to move away. Shortly after, Carrie's old friend Gabby arrived, and the two were overjoyed to reconnect after such a long time. Soon after, Gabby's boyfriend Chris made an appearance, a man with a reputation for being intoxicated most of the time. A few moments later, Olivia, the birthday girl, finally appeared, with another friend, Sarah, in tow. Sarah came from a wealthy family, but Carrie had always disliked her due to her toxic and cruel treatment of Carrie back in their high school days. Despite this, the group attempted to make the most of their reunion. The mood lifted even more when Olivia announced a surprise plan to attend a music festival called Blue Light. The destination was a significant distance away, but they had an ideal mode of transport: Olivia's boyfriend, Michael. He arrived in his uncle's RV, accompanied by his roommate Jason, an ex-Marine. Carrie made an effort to talk with Jason, but Sarah persistently interrupted. Before long, the entire group had boarded the RV and were on their way to Blue Light, their journey filled with laughter and fun. Along the way, they made a stop at a gas station for fuel and snacks. Carrie made another attempt to speak with Jason, but trouble was just around the corner. Two truck drivers began to harass Gabby and Sarah before turning their attention to another couple in the vicinity. Gabby and Sarah stood up to them, but the confrontation quickly intensified. Chris tried to intervene on Gabby's behalf, but soon found himself needing assistance. At that moment, Jason came forward, prepared to resolve the issue. While both truckers appeared menacing, Jason was a former Marine. He decisively neutralized them with vicious strength. Following the altercation, everyone quickly got back into the RV and departed. The group showered Jason with praise for his intervention, but their relief was cut short by the glare of headlights in their rearview mirror. A massive truck was ramming their RV. It was undoubtedly the same two drivers. Jason struggled to maintain control of the vehicle, managing to swerve it off the main highway just in time. The truck came up alongside them, and one of the drivers began shooting. Miraculously, Jason maneuvered them onto a different road and made their escape. They eventually pulled over to recover from the ordeal. Carrie moved in to kiss Jason, but before she could, Sarah intercepted and kissed him first, leaving Carrie speechless. Meanwhile, Michael was in a panic, certain his uncle would be furious about the dented RV. Sarah nonchalantly offered to pay for the repairs, dismissing his anxiety. Carrie tried to contact the police, but Olivia swiftly intervened. It was then that Gabby proposed a shortcut she knew, which she claimed would take them directly to Blue Light. Having no better alternative, they set off once more. Carrie tried again to engage Jason in conversation, but their path soon diverged into two separate roads. With no phone signal to guide them, they were forced to continue driving blindly into the darkness. Eventually, they came across a desolate diner and stopped. By this point, Chris had lost consciousness after consuming too many cheap drugs. Jason and Michael carried him to a bed, while Michael and Carrie went into the diner to ask for help with directions. The establishment, however, was filled with truck drivers. When Carrie asked the proprietor where the road led, his answer was deeply unsettling. He instructed them to turn the RV around and return to the highway. When Michael pushed for more information, no one would speak. Instead, the owner produced a firearm, ordering them to leave immediately. Disturbed, they returned to the RV. Carrie relayed what had occurred, but Michael paid no heed to the warning. Going against everyone's advice, he insisted on staying on the same dark path and began driving right back onto it. On the road, Carrie, Gabby, Sarah, and Olivia tried to improve the atmosphere by playing games inside the RV, but their fun was interrupted when something struck the vehicle. They looked out the windows but saw nothing. It was then that Michael nervously confessed he had taken the RV without his uncle's permission. If any damage occurred, he would be in deep trouble. The others insisted he investigate what had hit them, so Michael took a flashlight and went outside. He examined the front of the RV and saw a minor dent on the hood, but there was no sign of an animal or a person. After getting the RV started again, it roared to life. But then Michael saw something in the shadows. He edged closer as Olivia watched from inside. Then, without warning, Michael was viciously killed. Olivia screamed and fainted. Jason attempted to calm her, but the group had barely a moment to absorb the horror. A demonic voice then echoed through the night, calling out Michael's name. Jason pulled his gun and went to investigate. He heard something moving, darting between the trees. Then he heard Michael's voice calling from deep within the woods. Acting against his better judgment, Jason followed. He sensed something circling him. The instant his flashlight died, the entity attacked. The sound of gunshots filled the air, reaching the RV. Inside, Olivia and Chris were still unconscious, leaving a terrified Carrie, Gabby, and Sarah awake. Carrie glanced out the window and froze in terror. A pair of bloody hands was pressed against the glass. She recoiled in fear, just as the RV's door creaked open on its own. Jason was standing there, covered in blood. Before they could process what was happening, he was violently pulled into the air and dragged away into the darkness. The three girls were already petrified, but the situation worsened when a demonic voice started whispering, as if in conversation with them. In a panic, they scrambled to lock every door and window in the RV. But then, with a series of clicks, every single lock disengaged on its own. The windows began to open. The girls were paralyzed with fear. Sarah jumped into the driver's seat and started the RV, desperate to get away. They had barely traveled 100 meters when the engine failed, and the vehicle started to roll backward. An unseen force was pulling them. The RV was dragged all the way back to the very spot they had started from before it completely shut down. Gabby lost control, blaming Sarah for their predicament, but Carrie managed to calm her. The three of them sat in stunned silence, trying to comprehend the events. Then an idea came to them. They began to wonder if this was all an elaborate prank orchestrated by Jason and Michael for Olivia's birthday. It made a strange sort of sense. They had followed the men down this road, and Michael had insisted on disregarding the diner owner's warning. Perhaps even the RV reversing was part of the joke. But Carrie recalled a crucial detail. Olivia had a severe aversion to cigarette smoke and would immediately get sick if someone lit up near her. To test their hypothesis, Sarah lit a cigarette while Gabby filmed the reaction on her phone. Nothing happened. Olivia remained still. It was then that the horrifying truth dawned on them. This was not a prank. What was happening was terrifyingly real. Just then, something collided with the RV again, shaking it violently. The assault lasted for a few moments before the presence receded into the night. Breathing heavily, Carrie and Sarah tried to restart the RV while Gabby went to check on Chris, who had been unconscious through the entire ordeal. But when she tried to wake him, Chris was unresponsive. Panic mounted as she called the others over. Finally, Chris began to stir, only to vomit uncontrollably. He had overdosed. Once he could speak, he mumbled about a dream he had just experienced, a dream in which Carrie, Sarah, Gabby, and Olivia were present, but Jason and Michael were absent. The girls were baffled as to how Chris could have known about that dream. Before they could question him, he passed out again. It was then they noticed something peculiar. Olivia was now awake, speaking quietly to someone on her phone, but within moments she too had vanished. Only her phone remained, still playing a recording. Sarah was horrified to hear her own voice coming from it. Panic erupted. The three remaining girls tried to flee, but the RV doors were now locked from the outside. Through the windshield, they saw Olivia walking into the darkness, seemingly drawn by a voice, Michael's voice, beckoning her deeper into the night. Powerless, they could only watch as she disappeared. A few moments later, Olivia suddenly seemed to snap out of a trance. Terrified, she ran back to the RV, banging on the door and begging to be let in. But then, the impossible occurred. From inside, the girls saw another Olivia standing just a few feet away. There were two Olivias, one real and one an imposter. Sarah quickly pulled Gabby away from the door, her eyes wide with a horrifying realization. In the mirror, Olivia's reflection was absent. The creature's illusion had failed. Outside, Olivia screamed repeatedly until she too was consumed by the darkness. The three of them were now in a state of terror, filled with regret that they had not stayed on the highway. Sitting together, they began to connect the dots. They speculated that this place might be a burial ground, and they were correct. The creature hunting them was no ordinary beast. It was a Wendigo, an evil spirit from Native American folklore. A predator that stalks the night. It mimics voices, steals appearances, and thrives on fear. Wendigos are masters of deception, capable of shape-shifting, creating illusions, and even using hypnosis. They have one weakness. They are afraid of light. This is why the film is titled, "Don't Turn Out the Light." But before they could fully grasp this new reality, the Wendigo launched another attack. The girls scrambled inside the RV, fashioning makeshift weapons out of whatever they could find. In the midst of the chaos, a fire started, but Sarah was able to extinguish it. It was then that Gabby realized the Wendigo had retreated. Full of resolve, Gabby announced her intention to go outside for help, despite the desperate pleas of Sarah and Carrie. Armed with an axe, she ventured into the night. What she discovered made her blood run cold. Olivia's dismembered body. She had been outside the whole time. The reflection trick, the illusions, it was all the work of the Wendigo. Olivia might have been saved, but the creature had never given her a chance. Gabby was overcome with grief, but there was no time for mourning. She composed herself and set off in search of assistance, leaving Sarah and Carrie to barricade the RV, securing every door and window. Just as they believed they were safe, the RV's lights suddenly died. Plunged into darkness, they lit candles, but one by one the flames were extinguished. Then the TV switched on by itself, displaying a live feed of Sarah. Someone, or something, was standing right behind her. The lights flickered back on, revealing Chris, finally conscious. The girls rushed to him, frantically explaining everything that had happened. Chris, however, still believed it was all a joke. He laughed it off and said he was going to relax, perhaps by reading one of the books that had fallen to the floor. But Carrie noticed something deeply disturbing. The books were on the subjects of black arts, demonic rituals, and satanic practices, and they belonged to Michael's uncle. Carrie and Sarah started to suspect that someone might have used these books to summon a demon. Chris continued to dismiss their fears as ridiculous until the Wendigo attacked again, slamming into the RV and shaking the entire structure. With each impact, the lights flickered and then went out completely, seemingly because the creature could not tolerate the light. Chris grabbed some tools and managed to restore the RV's power. However, to get the engine to turn over, he had to go outside and check it himself. Armed with tools and a knife, he stepped out. He set the tools on the ground and leaned down to inspect the engine. When he reached for them again, they were gone, having been dragged under the RV. Chris crawled underneath the vehicle to find them. Inside, Carrie and Sarah suddenly realized he was no longer there. Panic set in. Under the RV, the Wendigo stabbed Chris with his own knife. Screaming, Carrie pulled him out, took the blade from his hand, and quickly bandaged his wound to stem the bleeding. Together, they managed to get the engine started, but a new problem emerged. The RV was out of fuel. The spare containers were in a storage compartment at the back. Chris and Carrie hurried to break the lock, grabbed the cans, and began to refill the tank. Meanwhile, inside the RV, Sarah made a horrifying discovery. Every single window and door had been thrown wide open. Then she heard a whisper. Blood began to stream from her eyes and ears. Carrie noticed that the fuel cap had sealed itself shut again, trapping Sarah inside with no way to see out. Suddenly, someone approached her. In a blind panic, Sarah stabbed them with a knife, only to realize it was Carrie. Horrified, she tried to stop the bleeding, applying pressure to the wound. Just then, they saw headlights approaching in the distance. A car was coming, and for the first time, a sense of relief washed over them. Carrie and Sarah sat back for a moment, trying to compose themselves, while Chris walked toward the car to get help. But then a terrifying thought occurred to Carrie and Sarah. The Wendigo always deceives its victims before killing them. Before they could shout a warning, it was too late. Chris had already moved a significant distance from the RV, whose lights suddenly went out. The approaching car accelerated behind him, and before he could get to safety, it struck him, pinning him to the hood with a set of massive antlers. Chris died on impact. Now only Carrie and Sarah remained. To their horror, they realized something sinister. The Wendigo is known to have antlers. The fact that this car had them was no mere coincidence. Exhausted and broken, the two of them collapsed inside the RV, eventually falling into a fitful sleep. Carrie awoke into a living nightmare. She saw Sarah sitting next to her, suddenly clamping her hands around Carrie's throat and choking her. She appeared to be possessed. Carrie jolted awake again, this time to find herself being stabbed by Sarah. But shockingly, this too was just a dream. Carrie was left trembling, unable to distinguish reality from another nightmarish vision. Just then, a little girl's voice began to sing a poem over the radio. In a fit of anger, Carrie smashed the radio. It was then that Sarah noticed a peculiar tattoo on Carrie's neck, shaped like a pentagram. Carrie quickly dismissed it, saying, "It's just a star, not a pentagram." Before they could dwell on it, smoke started to fill the RV. Carrie grabbed Sarah's hand and told her they had to run. The two of them rushed out of the RV, but then Carrie had a chilling realization. Sarah had never taken her hand. It was all a deception by the Wendigo. In that instant, the Wendigo killed Sarah. Terrified, Carrie ran for her life, stumbling through the deep woods. There, she discovered Gabby's severed leg, proof that Gabby had not survived either. Carrie continued to run until she finally reached the highway, but just as she was about to escape, she vanished into thin air, implying that Carrie did not survive either. Time moves forward, and we now see a new group of friends driving down the same road, also on their way to the blue light area. On their journey, they notice Carrie's abandoned RV. One of the girls comments, "Who would just leave such a nice ride behind?" The very same thing Carrie's group had said when they had found another deserted car. Finally, in a post-credit scene, we see a man eating his breakfast while watching television. Suddenly, the same girl's voice from the radio begins to sing again. The man calmly sets a photograph of a demon next to his plate, and just like that, the film concludes. So, here is the likely explanation. The man in the post-credit scene is probably Michael's uncle, the same man who owned the RV with the antlers on the front. Whether the Wendigo was connected to the RV or was simply waiting in the woods is never fully clarified by the movie. However, the abandoned car they saw at the beginning of the road is a grim indication that this has all occurred before. And now, just like those before them, Carrie and her friends have become the Wendigo's latest victims. If you found this recap enjoyable, please hit the like button, and I will see you in the next one.